Hello my lovely wolf pack, I am back with another video. Today, we're going to be ruining your childhood. We're going to be ruining your childhood yet again. Except for this time, I'm going to be telling you conspiracy theories specifically and only from SpongeBob. Before I start this video, remember to like and subscribe to my channel, follow me and everything, links in the description for my last video if you have not seen it. So hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my videos. And of course, if you want to hear more creepy conspiracy theories, let me know in the comments and I shall make more. But let's get to today's video. Roll the intro. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is why Mrs. Puff keeps teaching SpongeBob how to drive, even though he's the worst person ever. Now, here's the theory. Mrs. Puff is actually secretly a psychopath. Now, everyone remembers the episode of SpongeBob where Mrs. Puff gets like, you know what, just basically says, fuck it, I'll give you your driver's license even though you failed like a billion times and killed pretty much everyone on the Bikini Bottom. Well, Mrs. Puff has, when she's in her, one of the first episodes we see Mrs. Puff, she actually has her driver's license out. And it literally says she's from New Kelp City. New Kelp City is basically SpongeBob's version of New York City, if you have not known that. And now, the reason I say she's secretly a psychopath is because once she gives the driver's license to SpongeBob, she has what looks like an imagination, but actually it's a flashback. Now, she sees that SpongeBob is going to be like, I'm destroying everything and whatnot, and tons of people get killed or hurt, and basically everything is being destroyed. Well, in there we see the fish that looks realistic with hair, and every other time we've seen this fish, he has no hair. Well, that's because that wasn't her imagined thing. That was a flashback to where she did it before. And then, of course, once she did that, she says, I will not do it. Never. Not again. Which indicates that she's done this before, and the person who she gave the driver's license to just basically wiped out everyone, destroyed a bunch of buildings, and she had to bail. And there are now another episode I want to talk about is that when she's in the airport, because for some reason she's going off somewhere, of course that plane never goes anywhere, and she ends up leaving the airport, but that's not the point. So she's in the plane, and as for some reason, the lever that they put your bags on and then goes up in the plane, well, there was actually a newspaper in there, because the joke was they were throwing like bags and newspapers and trash and shit, and one of the newspapers was a very familiar figure. It was Mrs. Puff. It said, driving instructor, distracted police officer, with balloon animals. And now go back to the episode where she gives SpongeBob his driver's license. When he gets his own boat, and then Mrs. Puff steals the boat, and she's wearing what again? The exact same ski mask. And of course, she's like, I hope I remember to do this. Makes a balloon animal. And what did that newspaper say? Convict distracts police officers with balloon animals. That would indicate that she's running from her past. Now here's where it gets more complicated. In the joke says there's subtle jokes you should know. There are several scenes where she walks in her house, and there's a picture of Mrs. Puff entering her house with another picture of Puff Mrs. Puff entering the house, and it's in a time loop like that, sort of like in the Matrix. So, or not the Matrix, but Inception. But anyways, so there's that, but there's different kinds. We also see that they have other pictures on there, which we'll get to those later. But anyways, so those pictures, those endless loops, aren't just there for fun. They're for a meaning. And what is that meaning? It means that she's in a time loop. Basically, she's in a prison. She can never escape, even though she's not literally in prison, although she did have an ankle monitor, and we'll explain why she has that later in the video. But essentially, the reason she went to jail, and we all remember the episode where she's driving and it hits a truck, she goes to jail, and all she sees is SpongeBob. He pops up in weird places because they're trying to, I want her out. Well, guess what? All of that was in her head. In her head, because the warden of the prison, who we'll talk about more about him later, knows that she wants to be in prison because she's away from SpongeBob. She likes being in there, so he kicks her out under the condition that she has to teach SpongeBob again and again and again. She can never leave town either, which is why she has an ankle monitor. And going back to New Kelp City, she said that she used to have a husband there. And when she's in the Krusty Krab eating, she's like, oh, that's Mrs. He's like, hey, Mr. Krabs, that's Mrs. Puff. And he's like, oh, Mrs. Puff, she's married. And he's like, no, she's single. What happened to her husband? She doesn't like to talk about it. And she sees a flashback of her husband as a lamp. And then in the SpongeBob movie, SpongeBob and Patrick are in this souvenir shop full of dead fish, but when it's out the sprinklers, everyone comes back to life, including a very familiar fish. That's Mrs. Puff's husband. She doesn't know he's alive, and vice versa, because she used to live in No Kelp City, but now she doesn't, and her husband still thinks she's there. The warden of the prison used to live in New Kelp City, and when Mrs. Puff gave that person an ID, and they destroyed and hurt a lot of people, that student must have done something to that warden back then. They're really pissed off this guy, and he wants revenge. Well, when Mrs. Puff again walks sadly and depressed in her house, we see a picture of a very familiar character. It is a fish, but it's not the fish, it's not the warden. It looks kind of like him, but not fully. And then we realize that could be a father or a brother or a cousin or something like that. And that's the person or persons that Mrs. Puff unintentionally took away from him. So what this warden did is he knows that if Mrs. Puff is in prison, she's happy. So he does the unusual approach of taking her out of prison, but keeping her in the Bikini Bottom and forcing her to do this thing, like be miserable with SpongeBob. And when she goes to take her driving test for some reason, guess who's there teaching? SpongeBob. Because and there's like a guard forcing her to live through it, even handcuffs her to the fucking chair. And he's got this evil grin, and it's really weird. And then there's other photos taken long before those episodes where you can see the warden smiling, like he's plotting something, like a James Bond villain. And of course, she's had a boyfriend who ended up being a criminal, and for some reason he fell in love with her. By the way, still dating Mr. Krabs. Fuck you, Mrs. Puff. But anyways, so according to that, she fell in love with him, and then they got into some sort of mix up, and then Mrs. Puff did something, and then mistakenly took the boyfriend away. Or was it a mistake? No. They knew that he didn't do anything, but he took him away and put him away for a long time. I mean, I say, hey, why'd they do that? Because the warden knows that she's going to become happy because she has a boyfriend, and he doesn't want her to be happy, so takes him away. Then, she's back with Mr. Krabs, but yet again, he doesn't want her getting happy. So what does he do? On one of the episodes where Plankton slips in the Krusty Krab and tries to sue, Mr. Krabs, hey, I'm going to sue you for everything you got, including his famous obsession, the Krabby Patty formula. Now, once he gets in there, he slips on a puddle and gets hurt. Or hurt, as in he's faking, but still, Mr. Krabs is getting sued by Plankton, and he needs a lawyer, but of course lawyers are expensive, so he needs a really good, expensive lawyer. And guess who pops up? The warden of the prison. He pops up, and he's like, hi, I can be your lawyer. How much is... And Mr. Krabs is wondering, hey, how much is this going to cost me? I'm kind of cheap. And he's like, I'll do it for free. Which Mr. Krabs is well known for being a cheapskate, and it's like he cannot turn down this offer. So the lawyer goes to the bathroom, and when he comes out of the bathroom, he himself slips on a puddle. Purposely. He's not hurt either. And then after that, of course, he asked, instead of like hiring, hey, a different lawyer or having a friend, he asked the most incompetent person in the show, SpongeBob, to be the lawyer. He says that all you need is his briefcase, but never gave him the combination, putting Mr. Krabs up for failure. And what does that mean? Because Mr. Krabs was in deep trouble, and he knew he was going to fail, and he knew that he wouldn't be with Mrs. Puff. Of course, Mr. Krabs didn't really go to jail, at least not for long. But yeah, so that's another thing. And she can't leave, she can't be happy, she's stuck with SpongeBob, she's basically depressed and probably suicidal. They don't show it, but I'm assuming she is. And she's in this prison, but not a literal prison. Her freedom is her prison, knowing that she can't leave, she can't start a new identity because the warden knows that if she does, she's probably just going to do it all over again. So obviously he wants her to be miserable to the point where she has psychosis. And one of the SpongeBob episodes where he was having a party, you can see Mrs. Puff in the background talking to a SpongeBob ice sculpture. But in her mind, it's the real SpongeBob because she's out of her mind and she disassociated reality from, fiction. So she doesn't know what's what. And every time she sees SpongeBob, she gets PTSD, which you can't really blame her, but still. And that's something. Now let's move on to a different conspiracy theory about SpongeBob being a reality show. Now, they talk. You're asking, these fish talk, and how is it a reality show if fish don't talk in real life? Well, I think back in 1961, there was actually a place out in the ocean called the Bikini Bottom. Yeah, that's an actual place. And what's next to it is this famous little small island you always see in SpongeBob. This is the reason why I'm bringing this up, is because back in the day, they tested a nuke in that very area. And later on, they seen these fish with weird mutations. And there was even a fish that resembled a human man. It didn't talk, but it had a human face because its DNA was altered or mutated by the nuke that happened back then. And that's the theory, that every single fish in the Bikini Bottom or anywhere else is mutated because of nuclear radiation. That's the theory. And it's creepy because we're at fault for it. So if that's the case, then that means that there were humans who did that. My question is, what was life in the Bikini Bottom before the nukes? I wonder, did they have buildings back then? Probably not. And some of these nukes, this theory is actually really popular because sometimes in the series you'll see a building that's actually made out of a nuke or made out of a nuclear barrel of some kind, hinting of the fact about the nuke and the real Bikini Bottom. And there's that. And coming up next is a conspiracy theory about Mr. Krabs and his secret formula. We all love fast food. It's just a fact, and we love it, But sometimes there's some things in there you don't want to know. Now, of course, Burger King has the name Burger King. We all know what burgers are made out of beef. Okay, at least we hope they are. And we have Chick-fil-A. Chicken, that's what they make, right? Krusty Krab. What does that sound like to you? There's a theory that Krusty Krab, its patties are so famous because that Mr. Krabs kills his own kind and cooks it and gives it to people. And Plankton's no better. You know, you'd think he'd be better, but he's not. He's selling chum, which is fish guts. So he's killing people and selling the fish to eat, but for some reason, nobody wants the fish. Nobody wants the fish guts, but they do eat crab. So, there you go. That's literally that. So, another theory we're going to talk about next is that SpongeBob is never even a sponge. Not at all. The theory goes that he's not really a sponge, he's actually a human who died. And the theory goes that technically he's a sponge, but he's not a sponge at the same time. His spirit of a diver who went down to the Bikini Bottom thinking it's going to be regular. Well, of course, he went down to take pictures and found this city run by all these fish. And the thing is, once he went down there, the fish knew about it, and all the armies killed that person, and then his soul went into this nearest sea sponge. And that's why 99.9% of the time, no other sponges are around. There was like a few episodes where he had like a cousin who destroyed everything he touched, and then his grandmother, but that's it. Like there's no other sponges except for maybe like 1 or 2 episodes. But 99.9% of the time, no sponges except for SpongeBob. Which, you know, there you go. And if that's the case, then is all the fish like that? Is that their past? Is that how they keep their society going? By killing humans and putting their souls in nearest fish bodies? It sounds pretty interesting to me. And the next conspiracy theory is creepy nonetheless. The entire Bikini Bottom is not on Earth. It is actually in purgatory. Now, let me explain. So, one of the theories is that the entire SpongeBob series takes place in purgatory because he honestly looks really young. Like, there's no hint on how old he is. And he sounds like a young kid, but yet he lives on his own in a pineapple. And then, of course, a lot of all these other characters are humans, but Sandy, Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob, Patrick, they're all humans trapped in purgatory, and they're being tortured to live as animals underwater, but there's not really an ocean, it's in purgatory. And all the other characters, all the fish, the side characters, the background characters you see, they're not humans. Those are actually demons forced to torture them, forcing these people to live like this. And there's a really weird thing with all these crazy, wacky adventures. Now, you might think this is good. You might think it's good, but to each person, it's their own torture. Patrick is actually portrayed as pretty much like a pothead, you know, and that's his torture because Patrick was originally a mountain climber and a surfer, and he loves the adrenaline rush. So of course, when he went to purgatory, these demons made him a lazy ass motherfucker who wants to do stuff but is not able to. SpongeBob was originally the opposite. He was a lazy guy who just wanted to watch TV and lounge around, but the demons made him proactive and hyper, and looks like someone who's done like 5 monsters and snorted some coke, hyped up. And Sandy was originally a woman who loved the land. You know, she used to love going to archaeologists and digging up rocks and bones. But when she died and went to purgatory, of course, she had to be underwater because, I mean, it's water. You know, she loved the land, not the water. It goes that she was very afraid of the water, and that's why a squirrel, is underwater, forced to live there. Mr. Krabs was a real lover of spending a lot of money. He loved fast cars, he loved rich clothes, he loved all this shit. But of course, when he went to purgatory, they made him a cheapskate because he wants to buy all this awesome stuff, but they made his brain like he's going to be a cheapskate because that's what he hates. And that's the theory that every single one of the main characters, the people we see almost all the time, are humans, and all the other background characters are demons torturing these people for eternity. Which kind of makes sense to me, at least. I don't know if y'all agree with that, but that's theory. And now, another theory I want to talk about is that the SpongeBob show is sexual. In many different ways, too. The bikini bottom. The bikini bottom. What does a girl have under her bikini bottom? Well, I can't say because it's YouTube, but we all know what we're talking about here. The Krusty Krab is named after an STD because crabs, crusty, that's not good. That's probably disgusting. And then, of course, SpongeBob and Patrick are really, really close. And sometimes it seems like more than friendship. And yes, I know they're both guys, but the thing is, I've noticed some things back in the early days when SpongeBob used to always be around Sandy. He loved Sandy, but then, of course, the theory goes that Sandy rejected SpongeBob, and SpongeBob and Patrick became a couple. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that's the conspiracy theory I've read online. So, yet again, I'm just saying that. Another thing that I want to bring up to this theory is that I also read that because they are gay, eventually a lot of the characters found out, and they didn't like that, so they put them in some kind of rehabilitation, and they were forced to be straight just like everyone else, and that's why they also later on in the series have small fights, which makes them hate each other because they want to be with each other romantically and they can't, because otherwise they'd be killed. I'm not saying it's wrong to be gay, I'm just saying for the other characters, the background characters, they hate it. Just a heads up. And this comes to another theory I really want to talk about that I've heard a lot about SpongeBob. They're all about different addictions. SpongeBob is meth, Patrick is pot, Sandy's alcohol, Mr. Krabs is cocaine, Squidward is antidepressants. I have no idea what the hell his daughter is. I don't know, it doesn't really say, but that's the thing. And it's really weird because when you look at it, it does resemble drugs. And I looked into it, and SpongeBob was originally going to be an adult cartoon like Family Guy or South Park, which really adds on to the theory. And then, of course, our final theory about Mrs. Puff, going back to her, she's a kleptomania. If you don't know what kleptomania is, klepto is when you steal stuff. Like, you don't want to steal it. It's not like a burglar. No, you subconsciously have this urge all the damn time to steal. For instance, Mrs. Puff, when she was dating Mr. Krabs, she was showered with gifts, and it made her uncomfortable, but it wasn't uncomfortable for her to steal it afterwards. Then, of course, she was singing about how her snail was trapped in a tree, and then she said she's had it since she was a little girl. But, of course, if you go back a little while to one of the older episodes, that was Squidward's snail. Yeah. That episode where Patrick had a rock and they're embracing their snails together, that was Squidward's snail. And he even had the paperwork for it. And she stole that. She steals random shit from everyone. Tables from the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob's picture of his grandmother. His shoes. A love letter from Mr. Krabs. All kinds of stuff that she steals. And she's hoarding it. She's always hoarding it. And that's why she's a kleptomania. She steals shit she doesn't really need. And it's really, really sad because I think I actually know some hoarders who have these weird obsessions about keeping everything. You can literally... So I've actually seen some hoarders keep a jar of their toenails. I don't know why. But yes, so this is going to be the end of my creepy conspiracy theories about SpongeBob. If I definitely ruined your childhood, like this video. If I didn't ruin your childhood, like this video. If you like Taco Bell, like this video. I'm just looking for likes. So thank you guys for watching and enjoying this video. I really tried to search up a lot of them for you. And so thank you guys for watching and making our wolf pack grow every day and bigger. And I will be doing an update on my van soon, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much. Like, subscribe, follow me and everything, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of my videos. Thank you so much. Goodbye.